Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host for tonight's broadcast, Insane Lear 13, as we are prepared to get underway for the 9th round of this summer Porsche Cup Series presented by Leauge. Several of our drivers who are partaking in tonight's event ended up missing qualifying, the main examples being Blue Foxtrot 1 and EVQ LUXE, who I'm going to call him Equivlux for now. Eventually I'll figure out a proper name. Dex Bayuke is making his first start in the series. Ivy Franks is returning after his interesting start last week. Breezy Rain got pole position. While Mays was on track to get pole, he only did 2 laps in qualifying, then pulled off. And Little Kid Suave, your defending Porsche Cup champion, having a nightmare run in qualifying. He did not set a single clean lap in qualifying tonight. So Suave, still on probation, is going to likely just be trying to stay out on track and stay out of other people's way. For him, it's likely going to be a survival game. Breezy Rain has put his car on the podium in at least a third of all the events he has started this season between the Porsche Cup and GT3 Pro races combined. However, Breezy Rain still has not brought home a win this season in either Porsche Cup or GT3 Pro. He will be starting alongside Manuel Pedro, who finally broke through and got his first X-League win in the Porsche Cup race last weekend. Little Kid Suave, sorry, not Little Kid Suave, it's Mays, who is Breezy's teammate, is going to be starting third, right behind his teammate on the circuit. As we prepare to load onto the circuit now. There we go. And per usual, we do want to go ahead and give a quick shout out of thanks to our pace car driver XR Monaco in the BMW M4 machine. So as stated, Breezy Rain will be your pole setter for tonight's race. He'll be alongside Manuel Pedro, who won last weekend's race. Mays will be starting in third position, Breezy's teammate. Alongside him will be Tempered Ship, the driver who is hosting the lobby for tonight's event. Dex Bayuki, newcomer to the series, he will be starting up in the 5th position. So he'll be on row 3 alongside Angel Llama in that unpainted number 91. Behind them, Ivy Franks coming back with that Apple Rainbow machine. He is going to be on that row along with defending Porsche Cup champion Lil Kid Suave, who has been having nothing short of a nightmare summer within X-League. And then the very last row, row 5, will be 2 newcomers, EVQ Lux and Blue Foxtrot. Lux back there in that teal Porsche and Blue Foxtrot in a unpainted Porsche for tonight's race. Real quick, let's look at the fuel numbers. Can't really get a good idea what tires everyone is on, but look at the fuel numbers. 34% in the fuel tank for Breezy Rain for Manuel Pedro, who will be starting right alongside of him. 42% in the fuel tank, so he's potentially going to be able to go a little bit longer. Mays, who's going to be starting in third, he has 30% in the fuel tank, so one of the smaller fuel loads that we see. Tempered Ship, who's going to be starting fourth, 47% in his fuel tank, so he's going to be able to stay out for a while. Bayuki, starting in 5th, he has just under 40% in his fuel tank. Angel Llama, who is going to be on that row with him, 70% in his fuel tank, so he is definitely poised to go long. Ivy Franks, farther back here, he has just under 60% in his fuel tank. Lil Kid Suave, still on his probation, he's got 44% in his fuel tank. EV, near the rear of the grid, he is going to start with a full fuel tank, so I imagine he'll be slow, but he is likely going to be able to make a short pit stop later on. And Blue Foxtrot, leading up the rear of the grid, also will be having a full fuel tank. So I imagine EV and Blue Foxtrot will fall off the rear of this grid relatively quickly, just because of the extra weight in their cars due to all the extra fuel. Everyone else, though, I think will be able to stay relatively close and competitive with each other, at least when it comes to fuel load. It'll likely take us a lap or two to really figure out what tires everyone is on. As speaking of tires, this is only going to be a simple 30-lap race tonight. Tomorrow night's race will be 35 laps for the GT3 Pro category, but tonight it's only going to be 30 laps. These cars don't go through tires as fast because the tire wear multiplier is not tuned as high, but also these cars have a little bit more downforce and a little bit less straight line speed, so you don't really burn up the tires as quickly. The difference isn't ridiculous, but it can play out to be about a lap or so on a track roughly this size. As the field now comes out of the final corners, and they start to double up. Breezy Rain on the inside, Manuel Pedro on the outside. This circuit is notoriously difficult to overtake at, let alone stay with someone else. It may be a survival game rather than a classic proper race. But as they come to the line, 5 rows of 2 will come across the start-finish line. Green flag is coming into the air right now, and we are underway here at Virginia. And that was an awful start by Pedro. Immediately, Breezy gets a clear jump. And already, Pedro being attacked by Timbership on the extreme outside. Maze gets to his inside. Pedro trying to wrap the long way around, but it's not a lot of grip out there. He does have enough grip to keep it on track, but he will fall behind Maze. So Breezy, Rain, and Maze now run first and second. Pedro's going to get back to the inside of Maze, squeeze him a little bit wide as they come out of that second braking zone. He'll have the inside in the following corner as well. Still can't complete the overtake on Maze until there. Maze backs out of it, so Maze flips back to third. Timbership fourth. Our top five, all in the positions they started in, but Suave already up into the sixth spot early on now. And now this is going to be an interesting part. In prior Forza games, this set of corners was a very, very technical set of corners. Now in this game, with all the extra grip, you can go through these corners flat out, full throttle, and the entire top three all close down on each other. They come down the hill, and then they'll come up to one of the most technically difficult circuit corners here on this circuit. As the elevation falls out from under you, then pops back up under you. It's very easy to slide wide, but our top three all staying right on top of each other, nose to tail right now. Breezy, Manuel, Pedro, it's Maze, starting to form a breakaway on the rest of the field. They have about a second on the duo of Timbership and Dex Biuke. Pedro still keeping with Breezy, but I don't think he's going to be close enough to dive bomb at the end of the back straightaway here. Now they come downhill, and Breezy, your leader, goes off. Completely self-inflicted mistake, and Breezy goes off at the end of the back straightaway, as immediately going to fall back to the 7th position, 8th position at that. So Manuel Pedro goes to the lead in his number 8 green Rolex Porsche, with Maze running right behind him, and Breezy started on the pole, but is not even going to lead the first lap tonight. Wild how that turns out. Breezy's already gotten back by Franks. Maze closes in on Pedro, but misjudges the turn 1 braking zone in the process. So a bit of a fight here at the very front of the field, and Breezy may have just lagged. Did Breezy just rage quit? Breezy may have rage quitted out of the event. So despite starting on the pole, will not even complete 2 laps. We'll try to reach out to Breezy and see what in the devil happened to take him out like that. But your top 2 run, nose to tail. They have pulled roughly a 1.5 to 2 second gap on Dex Biuke, who has slipped his way up into the 3rd position over Timbership. Suave has fallen back behind Franks at this point, and EQ and Blue Foxtrot have lost touch with the rest of the field, as we anticipated that they would. Alright, so now the field's gotten spread out, so now we start looking at the survival game. This circuit has a lot of undulating corners, and the elevation changes move a lot. It makes it very difficult to keep the car on track and the weight properly sprung going through the corners and on initial acceleration. So drivers who keep themselves on the pavement as long as possible will have their best days today. Pedro goes a little bit wide on the braking zone, and coming to the party right now is Breezy Rain. Hopefully he'll be able to hear us momentarily as we watch our top 2 go through the final corner, and that's Pedro who's a little bit wide in the final corner, and Maze might have a bit of a run on him. Boy, does Maze have a run on him. Down the front straightaway, Pedro defends the inside. Maze gonna try and go the long way around at the start-finish line. Maze actually led that lap. He's got the car about 2/3 of the way ahead. Going into the braking zone on turn 1, though, there's just no grip on the outside. Pedro goes nice and deep and gets the lead back right away. So Maze technically leads the lap, but Pedro is back to being your leader once again, so that will be interesting. As coming into the party now is Breezy Rain, or at least he's trying to come into the party. And our leaders are really struggling to keep their cars on circuit there. May still right behind Pedro, and while these two are struggling, they're still pulling away slowly from Dex Biuke at the head of this field through the uphill S's. And now they'll fire around this fast left-hander and go downhill. There's a small straightaway into this hairpin. For now, it looks like Pedro has what he needs to keep Maze behind him. Down the back straightaway again. Dex Biuke still more than 2 seconds out of our top 2 at the moment. Real quickly, we look at the tire wear. 26% wear pretty evenly all around for Manuel Pedro. For for Mays, who runs right behind. He has that 26% on the front, but 25s in the rear. So their most worn tires are pretty even at the moment. Downhill into the final corner, and Mays cuts the corner. Slides a bit wide in the process, and that will let Pedro get a little bit of breathing room. Will he be able to open the gap enough to break the draft on Mays? If he does, that will likely decide the race win unless Pedro goes off on his own. Of course, Mays could always try and run an alternate strategy. But right now, it does not look like that is something in his playbook. Dex BUK has worked his way up into third, pulling ahead of Tempered Chip. Angel Llama started in the rear half of the field, but he is now up into the 5th spot right now. Pedro's almost broken the draft on Mays, but Pedro has a big switch, and he's off, and he touches the tire barrier. He licks the tire barrier out of the top spot. No damage to the car, but Pedro completely self-inflicted mistake, and now it's Mays who goes into the lead, and suddenly Pedro is under pressure from behind from Dex BUK. Just as they come out of the uphill S's, big twitch by BUK behind Pedro there. But now Mays shoots into the lead, so it is going to be one of these races where survival is going to be what likely decides this victory here tonight. So now, Pedro was already pulling away from Mays. Now, he'll have to figure out a way to run that gap back down, and he'll want to get away from Dex BUK as fast as possible. Mays has already won several times this season in the Porsche Cup. Pedro has also won once this season as well. If BUK can keep on with Pedro and Pedro can drag the two of them up to Mays, we could have a first-time starter win an X-League event. Now, I've not been with X-League long enough to tell you if that has happened before, but it's not happened while I have been covering this series. So now we begin our 5th racing lap. BUK gets the bumper right on Pedro as they get onto the braking zone for turn 1. And that is Blue Foxtrot up ahead that this group is slowly closing in on. So Foxtrot likely go a lap down. He goes off into the dirt. He's got a big hunk of engine damage as well, and seems to be struggling just to keep the car on the track right now. He actually pulls off to let the leaders through. So he will go a lap down now. And we're not even a third of the way through the race. This is going to be a nasty event for Blue Foxtrot tonight. All right, we look at our 2nd and 3rd place drivers. Still nose to tail as they come through the uphill S's, through that far, hard left-hander, and that's Pedro off again, deep into the dirt this time, and he makes contact with BUK, who kept the car on track. BUK now by Pedro. So Pedro goes from lean to now slipping back into the 3rd position. This will let Mays try to open the gap up on this group a bit. But now you also wonder, could BUK maybe have a shot on Mays if Mays has a bit of a hiccup? Again, BUK didn't have a great time in qualifying compared to Mays or Pedro, but he has done a good job staying within about 3 seconds of the leader and now getting by Pedro just by virtue of keeping the car on track. Blue Foxtrot has now been lapped by the entire field. This here, between Pedro and BUK, is the closest thing we have to a battle, and it looks like Pedro has a run. Pedro pulls up alongside. He's going to get his nose ahead of BUK at the start-finish line. Will actually completely clear BUK by the time they get to the turn 1 braking zone. So Pedro back to 2nd. BUK puts the bumper to Pedro, but not enough to push him offline. Just enough to say, hey, remember, I am in your rearview mirror. Through the 2nd hard braking zone here. Thing is, while Pedro had his off moment and then had to get back by, he has lost incredibly valuable time against Mays. Mays did not partake in the Spa race in the series, which kind of semi-randomized where he is. If we were earning championships over points over this entire season, it would probably be a fight between Mays and our NDL drivers for the Drivers' Championship, but the thing is that they have not been showing up to every event. I don't think anyone except Breezy Rain has actually shown up to every event this season. However, it was decided early on that points would not be awarded for this season of the Porsche Cup due to the sporadic attendance. Going down the back straightaway once again, it looks like Pedro is starting to pull away from Leauge and might be starting to run down on Mays. Using the point of interest camera, this is down in turn 1. Okay, we're going to use our point of interest camera to kind of engage the actual gap on track between our top 2. Okay. 1,001, 1,002, 1,000. I think it's about 3 seconds right now between our top 2 at the moment. Leauge still holding in Pedro's draft for right now. We look at the tire wear of our top 2, 53% already on the tires for Mays. This is his 7th racing lap. For Pedro, he is at 54%. So they're even on tire wear right now. Look at Leauge, who's running in 3rd position, 54% as well. He's actually got a bit of engine damage and still keeping up with the leaders. So Leauge putting on a respectable show right now. So if you can go 7 racing laps on a set of soft tires, well, that's not really going to be a nice even 30 laps. You'll want to either run an extra lap on the softs once or twice throughout the race, or run a stint on the medium so you don't deal with any massive tire fall off. Because you pit on lap 8, then lap 15, lap 22, and then lap 29, there's still 2 laps that would be unaccounted for. Again, I imagine you'd want to run 1 stint on the mediums to soak up those 2 laps, or just spin an extra lap out here on the softs at some point. But this circuit is very, very demanding on tires just because of how many corners you go through here. It looks like our top 3 are all pitting at the exact same time. So Mays, Pedro, and Leauge all jump into the pits simultaneously here at Virginia after 7 racing laps. And Tempered Ship, though, he wants to stay out a little bit longer. And he's only at 40% wear, so it looks like he is on the medium tires. So if you can go 7 racing laps on the softs, the mediums can probably take you about 10, maybe 11 laps. So Tempered Ship might try to do this race on just 2 stops by running only the mediums. Car won't really feel good at any point in the race, but if you can keep it on track, minimize mistakes, only 2 stops would be a great way to go at this. So Leauge, despite having to repair the engine damage, ended up right behind Pedro again. And they have actually closed a small amount on Mays. Suave now up into the 5th position, as I believe he also has not yet made his stop. Yeah, he is also on a harder compound tire as well. This has also put EV Clux here in 6th. He is also on the harder compound tire with a little bit of engine damage at the moment. So Mays right now is clear of Pedro, who is now trying to gap Leauge. Looks like Leauge may have had a bit of a hiccup there. Falls about half a second off. Now more than that in the hairpin. So now Leauge has his self-inflicted mistake. So Mays is really our only driver in the podium positions who has not yet had, who has run most in the podium position most of the day. He's the only one who has not yet had a driver-inflicted mistake thus far. Again, Tempered Ship, I'm really interested to see, can he make this race on just 2 stops, doing all mediums all the way through. Mays, Pedro, and Leauge running on the softer compound tires, focusing on lap times, try and run him down. Yeah, Pedro has absolutely gapped Leauge at this point in the event. And Pedro has gapped him as well. Don't look now, but EV Clux has pulled away from Angel Llama a bit now. So again, these drivers, some of these guys are running a harder compound tire, trying to save time by just spending less time in the pits. The only driver I think that is likely to massively benefit is going to be Tempered Ship. It looks like Blue Foxtrot has left after going 2 laps down in a span of just 10 laps. Blue Foxtrot seems to say that he realizes he is not at a competitive speed tonight, so he is not going to attempt to run the rest of the event. So Tempered Ship runs 13 seconds ahead of Maze. Now Maze is in a position he just can click off laps and just run down Ship right now with no issue. Then Manuel Pedro runs about 14.5 seconds behind Tempered Ship right now as well. And behind them, Dex Biuke is just a tick over 16 seconds behind the leader. These three are the leaders on the primary strategy. The strategy that saw them put on soft tires initially. Tempered Ship started on the mediums. Looking at the tires of our 3 drivers right now, 13.5% wear already on Maze. For Pedro, who's trying to run him down, he is at 14% wear. So Pedro is burning down the Nicotina more to catch Maze. Biuke is at 14% as well. So Pedro trading in tire life for lap time right now as he is trying to close the gap back down on Maze. And if this is the winning strategy, then this would be a fight for the win. But the way this is going, Maze is not tearing into Tempered Ship as fast as I thought he would. This might be the winning strat that Ship is on. He's only now hit 52% wear on his tires. This lap's not going to be great by any means, but when he gets to the end of this lap, he can pit and he'll only have 20 laps left. He'll only have one more stop. Everyone else has at least 2, potentially 3. Maze closes a little bit there in Sector 1 that time. And Pedro is closing as well. So Maze and Pedro now finally starting to cut into Ship's lead, but that is still a double-digit lead that he has over this group. So this race, we thought was going to be a survival race, but now it's turned into a bit of a strategy battle. Maze clicking off faster laps, but will have more stops to make. Thing is, though, the pit lane is not very long here at Virginia. You don't lose an absurd amount of time making pit stops here compared to other circuits. EQ has just about fallen into the grip of Ivy Franks right now. He's not having a great time in that number 77 Porsche, but Franks has fallen to last on track right now of the still running drivers. Alright, and that is the word. Tempered Ship pits, but he pits when he still has a 10-second lead on Maze and a little bit less than a 12-second one on Manuel Pedro. Again, that is the worst that Tempered Ship's tires are going to be at. He went what you could basically measure as 10.5 laps on those tires. He only has to go 10 laps past this point, so his tires are not going to be feeling nearly as bad after this. Where's Ship going to end up in relation to Suave, who is still on track? He is going even longer on his tires. Suave's going 11 laps, so Suave might try to go long enough on the mediums, so on a final stint, he can throw on a set of softer compound tires and go fast at the end. So Maze leads by about 2 seconds over this man Pedro, who just about went off, drops tires off into the dirt again. And if these drivers are on the soft tires, they'll have to pit around lap 15. But they seem to be going a little bit better now. I think they may have thrown on a set of mediums this time by, just so they can go a bit longer with a little bit less to worry about. So this means that Tempered Ship will be saying times comparable to our top 3 right now. But he still has, in theory, fewer stops to make. I can't imagine that Maze and Pedro are just going to run mediums to the end like this. They could try, but the thing is, they'd have to, let's just say they go 11 laps, that would take them to 19, then another 11 after that would only get them to 30. They'd still be down a lap somewhere. And that's assuming they stretch their mediums out to 11 laps, and they'll just keep it at 10. So right now, while Maze is faster, I think it is Tempered Ship who has the real measure of the field today. It looks like Franks has just gotten by EV Clux here at the end of the back straightaway. I'm almost shocked that no one thought, I mean, I'm not that shocked, but I'm kind of shocked that no one thought of running the hard tire compound, just pitting once at the end of the 16th lap and never pitting again. Now, granted, it wouldn't save you a lot of time, and the hards are just an incredibly uncompetitive tire in this game. But for one of the newcomers like EV or Blue Foxtrot, you would think that would have been something they would have considered. Suave runs ahead of Angel Llama right now. 34% wear on the tires for Llama. For Suave, who's in 5th, 62%, and he's almost out of fuel. So Suave has stretched this out 13 laps, 12 racing laps basically. So when he pits, it's only going to be with about, 18 to go? Big off-track moment there for Suave. Yeah, he'll only pit, and he'll come out with 18 laps to go. Now, the softs can only go 7 laps. But that would be enough that he could hypothetically throw on a set of mediums after this, and then throw on a set of softs late, and run to the end. He is basically paying the piper right now by spending all these extra laps on track at this moment. He's already taken the hit to his lap times. He doesn't have to worry about taking the hit to the lap time again later. Unless he tries to go double softs to the end. That would be an awful choice. But he's gone almost half the race without a pit stop. Although that thing is sliding all over the place. And he can't keep Angel Llama on fresher tires behind him. He just loses so much time. But he's trying to cut out pit stops. So Suave on his own wild, interesting strategy right now. Your top 2 right now is still Maze and Pedro. Maze, Pedro, and Tempered Ship have been your 3 leaders of the event thus far. And we look at Maze and his tires. He is at 41%. Doesn't have a lot of fuel left, though, so he may still have to pit on 15 just due to fuel concerns. For Pedro, same story for him. And then Dex Buke, who's kind of lost touch with these two, same story. So it looks like Maze, Pedro, and Buke did throw on a set of soft tires, and they are only going to be able to go to about lap 15, maybe 16. So if these guys are going to try and go 8 laps on the softs instead of 7, and that'd be 8, 16, 24, 32, and you don't really go to 32, that would be a 3-stop affair. So Maze, Pedro, and Buke trying to make a 3-stop strategy, all softs, but those soft tires are going to have some incredibly problematic fall-off in these final laps. They have not yet experienced what the last lap on a run is going to be like for them. And that's assuming they get to lap 16. But we're going to spin a lap on board with our leader, Maze, see what a flying lap looks like in Virginia on worn-out softs in the Porsche Cup. We'll be back shortly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Virginia. That is your leader, Maze, being pursued by Manuel Pedro behind. We are just past this race's halfway point right now. There is third place Dex Bayuke. Was keeping up with Maze and Pedro earlier, but as this run's gone on, he seems to have lost a bit of pace. And our fourth place driver coming up shortly, that is Tempered Ship. Was trying to run an all-medium strategy to counter the likes of Maze and Pedro. The interesting thing, Maze and Pedro and Bayuke are in no man's land now. They are pushing their tire life deeper than they have all day long. They don't know how these tires are going to feel. And they already lost time at the end of their prior run. They're going to lose even more this time. They've got to keep it on track if they want to counter Tempered Ship. Now, they have pulled a massive gap on Tempered Ship this last lap. It makes me wonder if maybe Ship has slid off circuit somewhere. If so, that would pretty much put the race comfortably back in Maze's control as long as he doesn't make a mistake. Down the back straightaway. He only has 2.9% left in the fuel tank. He'll make it to the pits, but he has to pit now. He's at almost 60% wear on his tires, and then you have Manuel Pedro here in second, almost at 60% as well. So I think as long as neither of these guys blow this braking zone, they'll make it to the end. The question is just going to be, can Pedro recover from his self-inflicted mistake earlier and run the gap on Maze back down? Because they both opened up a big gap on Tempered Ship. I have a feeling that Ship is not going to be able to get back by them despite making one fewer stop. Here come our top three into the pits this time by. Maze into the pits now. Pedro into the pits now. So is Bayuke. So now we put our eye on Tempered Ship. Running what we believe are the harder compound tires, the mediums to be exact. He'll clear at least Bayuke on track, but Maze and Pedro are already out of pit road. Now he's got to run. He'll clear Pedro without issue. And is going to be right behind Maze. So, but yeah, sure enough, I am positive that Ship must have had some sort of self-inflicted mistake because he has fallen behind Maze after this all. He was leading by 10 seconds earlier, and while Maze has been faster, it does not look like he was a second a lap faster, or more than a second a lap faster than Ship. Down this short straightaway, and then you get to these uphill S's, which are completely flat in these cars. Just gotta find the proper line and fire it on. You'll bounce over the curbs very aggressively. Of that, there is no doubt. But these cars are able to handle it. And now into the hairpin. And sure enough, you can see Ship is starting to gradually lose time on Maze. As Maze, you get your tires warmed up very, very quickly here because you get two heavy braking zones, one right after another. So when you pit, you are not spending a large amount of time on corners without braking with cold tires. You get those tires heated up very fast here. So Maze already pulling. Now Tempered Ship holding up Manuel Pedro. And Pedro being held up by Tempered Ship. This is for position. And Pedro being held up here is going to even more, is going to benefit Maze even more. There we are. Pedro already clears Ship, and Ship goes off! Ship's big drift gets the car back on circuit without losing too much time. But that pretty much settles it. So his race for the win is over. I think now Ship's best hope is going to be third. He has to try and outrun Bayuke between now and the end of this race. But yeah, that pretty much ends our fight for the win between Maze and Ship. So now it's just going to be, can Pedro do anything to run Maze down? Pedro and Maze were right on top of each other early on. But Pedro made a self-inflicted mistake, actually two in a row, that put him behind. He has basically been trying to dig deep to close the gap down on Maze. And now it seems like if these drivers can go 8 laps without tire fall-off being too problematic, that coupled with the fact that Tempered Ship is just not able to keep the car on track, has not been able to keep up, this means is just a question of, can Pedro run Maze down before the end of the event? It's a bit past the race's halfway point right now. Llama in 5th, Suave in 6th, Franks is 7th, and 8th is Evie Quilux. Suave is on fresher tires. Likely a set of sauce by the looks of it, as he's trying to run down Angel Llama here, who is on even fresher rubber. But oh wow, that is a big off for Llama. A prolonged off. And suddenly Suave is right on him. Battle for position now for 5th. So Suave has caught Llama, but does he have any idea on what to do with him as they go down the back straightaway once again? Doesn't look like Suave's close enough to make a big lunge this time by. Oh, and that's Suave off! Suave off at the end of the braking zone. Gets going again, no issue. Looks like that battle ended as quickly as it began. Mays continues to lead, but Pedro is in his rearview mirror and getting slowly but surely closer. Also, Dex Bayuke is starting to run down on this man here, Tempered Ship. So it's not getting any easier for Tempered Ship right now. He has to try and outrun Dex Bayuke to steal a podium result. And these four kind of in a zone of their own. Llama and Suave are half a second out of this group, basically. They are not going to be in contention for a podium spot unless one of our top 4 has a damage-inflicting accident or have some sort of disconnect. Pedro continues to close on Mays. This is the... What camera is this? Is this the final corner? Yes, this is the final corner. We'll use this to try and time the gap between Mays and Pedro. And Mays is off! Mays just went off there! No, that's not Mays. Yeah, who is that? Where is that camera? That looked like Llama and Suave. I guess that was the hairpin. Okay, well... And we just missed our opportunity to time the brakes in turn 1 as well, it seems. This is the uphill S's, okay. One thing of note though, and we say this all the time, here in X League, time penalties are not removable, but at this stage of the race, only 2 drivers have time penalties. Unfortunately, though, one of them is a contender for this win, and that is Manuel Pedro in 2nd. He has half a second of time penalty, so he needs to figure out a way to force Mays into making a time penalty, or figure out a way to catch Mays, get ahead of Mays, and then open up the gap if he wants to win tonight. Down the back straightaway again. Right on board Pedro. Looks to me like he is within the draft of Mays now. At least visually it looks like he is within the draft of Mays. So he has been going very hard trying to run this gap down, and now he'll definitely be in the draft and get down to the front straightaway. So it's taken him about 2/3 of the race. But Pedro has recovered from his 2 mistakes from earlier. It looked to me earlier like Pedro was faster than Mays, but how much of that was Mays just conserving his stuff, and how much of that was Pedro just legitimately being faster? As it comes across the start-finish line now, no need to measure the gap. As you can see, they are right on top of each other. Pedro going to take a wider entry into turn 1, Mays a tighter entry, so Mays trying to diamond the corner off, Pedro's more trying to round it off. Right behind Mays here. Now he looks to the inside, side by side for a lead. In the second braking zone on the circuit. Pedro has the inside line. He runs Mays a little bit wide. They're still neck and neck. Mays has the bumper ahead, but Pedro's able to go deeper to the corner, but now the advantage goes back to Mays. Still side by side as they come out. Pedro gets the nose ahead. Big contact between the two of them. Pedro drops a tire into the dirt, but he's clear. Pedro clears Mays. Well, he ran Mays down and got by him without too much issue there. And they're not the only ones fighting. Tempered Chip has now been caught by Dex Bayuke. As this duo comes up through the uphill S's now. Bayuke drops the tire into the dirt, though, and will lose a big chunk of time in the process. We look at our leaders. Okay, so time penalties work in Mays' favor. If he stays right in Pedro's draft from now until the end of the race, he'll have this race won. But if Pedro puts down some good laps, breaks the draft on Mays, gaps Mays by half a second or more, Pedro can go back-to-back and wins here in the Porsche Cup. Still, these two run right on top of each other, as now they begin to head downhill. Through the final corner. Again, through here, it works out well in Mays' favor. The draft is nice and strong, keeps him right under. For Pedro, his advantage is mainly at the end of Sector 1, then through most of Sector 2, and Tempered Chip makes his stop now with 10 laps to go. Pedro leads Mays still. Question is, can Pedro gap Mays? Because otherwise Mays can win this race without even trying. He can just stay in the draft and let time penalties bring this victory back to him. The way the draft works in this game, though, it is very easy to catch somebody. It's not too difficult to pass somebody, but then to break away from them afterwards, a little bit more difficult. Mays hasn't really made any mistakes today. Pedro has made a couple. This lap, at least, Pedro not able to break the gap on Mays. And these two are going to stay out here for another lap or two, more than likely. I think two more. They'll finish this lap, and I think they'll do two more laps afterwards. Their tires should be able to go to lap 24 without too much issue here. So when we were in this position earlier, Mays did nothing, and Pedro went off on his own twice. Right now, Pedro needs to figure out a way for either Mays to fall off or to make his own time penalty mistake. Oh, and that's Pedro wide in the final corner, and Mays gets to his inside. Side by side for a lead once again as they go down the front straightaway. Mays on the inside, Pedro on the outside. It's going to be a drag race as they come to the line. Your leader by a nose is going to be Mays. Mays leads once again as they go down to the braking zone of turn 1. This should be enough to give Mays the top spot back. Around the outside is Pedro, though. Still holding that outside line, making it work. He'll be on the inside in the following two corners now. Pedro's going to complete the overtake back on Mays. So Pedro back ahead of Mays, but Mays crosses him over on exit. But Pedro goes deep into the following corner to negate that crossover because Mays just did not have the momentum he needed. So Pedro back to the top. But again, in terms of penalty, Pedro half a second, Mays nothing. And this duo is now about 8 seconds out from our leaders. Not 8 seconds from our leaders, 8 seconds out from Dex Bayuke. So even if one of them slides off, I don't think they'll be caught by Bayuke, as long as they don't end up damaging their car. So it is these two fighting out to the end, and frankly, with the way this is going, I think there's going to be an easy walk-off here for Mays, because he does not have to make moves. He can just hang out behind Pedro and let this event come to him. Tempered Chip runs about half a second ahead of Llama, but about half a second behind Dex Bayuke, so he is not in a position to do anything to the end of this race. Looks like fourth is going to be the best he can go for. Even though Bayuke does have another stop he'll have to make, he'll likely end up close enough to Chip that he'll be able to get back by him afterwards. Top two still right on top of each other. They come out of the final corner this time. Pedro slow again. Mays has another run. So Mays is not fast enough to lead this race, it seems, but he is fast enough to stay close, to stay within the time penalty of Pedro. Again, we expect our leaders are going to pit at the end of this lap. And by doing so, we anticipate this will be the last stop. And if we see either of them lose ground due to tire fall off, it will be now. Because after they make the stop, they only have 7 more laps on their final round of soft tire. So they're not even going to push the final stint as far as they are right now. I'm a little shocked that neither of them tried to flip the last 2 stints on the tires, tried to run 7 laps on this stint instead of 8 laps to get a lap or 2 in clean air. But it seems like that was not a serious consideration. Nose to tail between the 2 of them, so Pedro cannot pull away from Mays, it seems. Now a bit of a gap opens. Not quite half a second of a gap, but a bit of a gap opens now. But Mays will still be in the draft of Pedro, and Pedro nearly goes off, and he's spinning! And he spins into the pit lane and hits the wall! And that will most certainly put Pedro behind Mays after they complete their pit stops. Raceway UK pits as expected, and we think our top 3 are all going to be cleared of tempered ship. Yeah, sure enough, you can see Pedro way, way behind Mays now. That has not only taken him out of the lead, that has pushed him well behind Mays, likely out of drafting range. So he can probably run Mays down, but the thing is, he still has that time penalty that he'll get knocked with at the end of the event. X League does not let you remove time penalties under any circumstance. So Pedro kind of stuck in no man's land tonight. He may be the fastest guy on track, but that half-second time penalty, you can't outrun it if your rival can just stay in your draft the entire way around. So Mays, all but guaranteed to win tonight's race. He's got 28% in the fuel tank. Pedro, who runs behind him in second, has 28% as well. They're both on fresh tires that are not going to have any real bad fall off to the end here. They're both about 8 seconds clear of Raceway UK. So this is it, the final run to the end here. Of note also, Angel Llama runs in 5th, just a little bit ahead of Lil Kid Suave. Ivy Franks hangs out in the 7th spot. 8th right now is Evie Clux. So while Mays goes to the lead once again, is back to leading laps, the main linchpin, the focus of the majority of this race has been Manuel Pedro. As we take our last ad break, we're going to go ahead and take a Twitch-mandated ad break as we spin the full lap on board with Pedro as he tries to run down Mays in these closing laps. We'll be back momentarily here at Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Virginia as we are in our closing laps. 5 laps to go here at Virginia. Manuel Pedro nearly wrecked coming into the pit lane while leading, so that's put him behind Mays. So once again, Pedro behind the 8 ball trying to run down the gap to catch Mays again. But the biggest problem he has, he's caught Mays before. He's passed him before. But time penalties are not working in Pedro's favor. Not only does he need to catch Mays and pass him again, he needs Mays to get a time penalty or Mays to go off circuit on his own. Otherwise, Pedro just simply does not have a chance of winning this race. It's likely going to seem futile, but the wild thing about racing is that weird, bizarre things happen. I would not put money on it happening tonight, but for Pedro, doesn't really have anything to lose. He is about 8 seconds ahead of third place Dex Bayuke, and not likely to be caught by him at all on the run to the end here. Basically, every other spot on track has pretty much been solidified. Potentially, our top 2 have been solidified as well, but we want to keep an eye on this as they come to the end here. When they hit the line, it will be 4 laps to go. We know tire wear is not going to be an issue. These drivers will all easily make it to the end on the soft tires that they have right now. And while Pedro tries to run him down, we want to go ahead and talk about our third place runner, Dex Bayuke. First start in X League, and he is going to pull out a very respectable podium. Yes, this has been a race of survival to some extent, but Bayuke was able to keep pace with Mays and Pedro in the first stint of the event. And even after losing them, it's not like he's fallen a second a lap off pace. We're about 27 racing laps in, and Bayuke's only about 8 seconds out. So he's losing only about a third a second. Yeah, about a third a second a lap, if not a little bit less than that. So it's not like Bayuke is unbearably off the pace. And I would be very interested to see what he can do, not just in the Porsche Cup races coming forward, but also in GT3 Pro going forward. Your leader is still Mays. Pedro still trying to run him down, but the clock is ticking. He's been in this position before in this race. He ran Mays down successfully, caught him, passed him, but could not open the gap enough to neutralize the time penalty. Still not within the draft of his rival on circuit. For those of you who missed the earlier parts of the race, Breezy Rain started on pole, but didn't lead the first lap. Went off at this very corner here, fell to 8th, and then lagged out about half a lap later and seemed to have some sort of issue because he tried to get back in the lobby just to spectate, couldn't stay in the lobby, tried to jump into the Xbox call for interviews, couldn't do that. Blue Foxtrot went 2 laps down the first 10 laps of the event and then withdrew, and that is Pedro off. That is likely going to end the fight for the win, as Pedro has gone off again with now just 3 laps to go, and that gap opens up even bigger. So our race for every position has now basically been decided. Tempered Ship led some laps early. He is on an all-medium tire strategy. His problem, though, is that it looks like he's just not been able to keep up the pace, and we believe he's gone off a few times as well that we've just not seen, which has dropped him back to the 4th spot on the circuit. Angel Llama going to come home in 5th. Little Kid Suave on track for a 6th place result. But technically, while it says he has gained 2 positions, he's really only gained 1. That was over Foxtrot, as his rival, Breezy Rain, lagged out early. Well, he didn't gain the position on Foxtrot. He gained the position over Franks. And EV Quilux, it's his first race as well, but he's at least should be happy. It looks like he might be able to stay on the lead lap to the end. Sure, it's no Dex Bayuke, but EV Quilux can still put a smile on his face saying, hey, I didn't cause an issue, I survived, and it looks like he's going to stay on the lead lap as we're coming to the end here. When our leader Mays hits the start-finish line, it will be 2 laps to go at Virginia. Pedro is starting to close the gap down again, but there's just not enough time. Even if he catches Mays, he needs to negate a time penalty, and that just does not look like it's going to happen. Gap is too big. As they come to the line, we measure the time gap as they go through turn 1, this time by. 1,001, 1,002, 1,000. Yeah, it's about 3 seconds. And we look at the penalties. Pedro now up to a full second of time penalties. So yeah, he has no chance unless Mays goes off now. That fight is truly over. Still well clear of Leauge, so every position in this race decided very early on. Hopefully this isn't a showcase of what tomorrow night's GT3 Pro race is going to be. Again, for those of you who are following that, 2 races left, but we will not be able to cover the last race in the GT3 Pro Championship. But there is a title fight on the line in GT3 Pro. Manufacturers Championship likely is going to be wrapped up tomorrow in favor of the Ford camp. Drivers Championship is still online in the GT3 Pro races. Mays has to be cautious coming up on lap traffic here as we're approaching the white flag. This is the first time they're going to have to deal with legitimate lap traffic. While they did catch Blue Foxtrot earlier, Foxtrot just pulled off and stopped on the green in the grass. So Mays actually has to be a bit cautious here. It would be foolhardy for him to go big on this teal Porsche and end up going off circuit. White flag this time by. RA has pulled alongside, but EV is keeping it side by side with him. Mays will complete the overtake, though, before they get to the start-finish line. So he'll be cleared. No big problem for Mays. White flag. This is the final lap. And yeah, he's clear of EV now. Pedro will have to get by EV here. Another second-place result for Pedro. But this means that 4 straight races for Pedro has resulted in a second, a first, and a second. That is some incredible performance near the end. And EV falls off circuit. Bit of a spin. Doesn't look like he's hit anything, though. But that is a lot of engine damage. It's likely the main reason why he has gone a lap down. But we're the only driver to finish this race a lap down by the looks of it. Again, every other position on track already decided quite some time ago. So they come up the back straightaway for the final time. Now there's just really only one heavy braking zone left. Mays, I believe, would be his 4th win of the season here in the Porsche Cup. Missed a race earlier. Hasn't had perfect performance in every event, but he has definitely been the king of the Porsche Cup Series this season. As they come to the start-finish line, checkered flags in the air. Your winner from 3rd place is Mays. Started 3rd, takes home the win. Pedro comes home in 2nd. Dex Leauge will come home in 3rd position. A podium in his first start. Tempered Ship way off the rest of the field. It was a respectable shot, but he could not master the car or the track well enough to make this alternate strategy work. Tempered Ship will have to be satisfied with a 4th place result. Angel Llama will come home in 5th. Yep, as Angel Llama coming home in the 5th position now. Spins out across the line for funsies. Little Kid Suave will come home 6th. At least he had a relatively quiet race and survives another week on his probation. Seventh place will go to Ivy Franks, and 8th will be EV Quilux, who is a lap down. Franks at 74% wear on his tires. Not exactly a great run for him. The strategy that he is on does not seem to have worked out for him. We're going to go ahead and take a Twitch mandated ad break, and when we come back, we'll try to talk with our podium finishers here at Virginia. All right. They both still seem to be in game chat right now. All right. Pedro, can you hear me? Awesome. Include your audio. And Maze, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Virginia. Our race is over. First, we want to talk with our second place finisher, Manuel Pedro. Pedro, very interesting race. You were leading, you were in the grass, and in the end just came up a little bit short. What do you have to say today?
It's a hard race on one hard track, and the car is bad in the bumps. But Maisie, he's fast and uh, is continuous. I am so fast, but I die any one times. The car not is good in this track, but tomorrow I guess the Ferrari is good. I try.
All right.
In
Will we see you
Portuguese
tomorrow?
now. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so
Goodbye.
yeah, go ahead and say what you want in Portuguese.
Corrida foi boa, só faltou um pouquinho de consistência, né? Tava rápido, mas a consistência tava fazendo a diferença. O carro também, os bumps não tava muito legal. Thanks, Sandy. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.
All right. Well, that is the word from our second place finisher, Manuel Pedro, who had a very interesting day today. But now I want to talk with our race winner, Maze. Maze, interesting time. Seemed like at the end of the day, you were the only person who didn't make any mistakes, and that brought you the victory here. What do you have to say about your run?
Yeah, I would agree, I guess. Pedro's fast. I still feel like we're kind of similar. I thought we were going to be able to battle it out at the end, but yeah, man, I guess just the consistency was the biggest part. I didn't run a single lap before the race. Maybe ran a few in practice. Didn't know the strategy, didn't know anything. So I guess I don't know how I did it, but he made a few mistakes. I was really looking forward to trying to battle with him at the end because I could tell I was faster in some sections and he was faster than me in others. So I was trying my best to figure out, like watching the time delta, like where is he gaining on me? Because that's somewhere I can be better. and let me try to figure that out like before it gets to like 5 laps to go or whatever. And then he just kept making mistakes. But yeah, man, I'm thrilled that I won. It's awesome just to kind of pop in and win a race and go home. So um, yeah, man.
All right. Tomorrow night, GT3 Pro here. Will you be running tomorrow? And if so, is there any lessons you can take from today to apply to tomorrow?
I should be. I'm definitely going to try my best to. And as far as if I've learned anything or any lessons that will transfer over, not really. I guess VIR is really difficult. It's very techy. And then if put one tire in the grass, you become a passenger. So you just hold on until you touch the asphalt again, if you ever do. So it's just mainly about not getting penalties, not pushing super hard. You could probably see that like my lap time was a little bit slower than my best lap, than Pedro's, but I was really just trying to tell myself, don't overdrive it, just be smooth and clean. So I'll try to do that again tomorrow too.
All right. Well, it's definitely made a interesting race. One last question. Were you ever concerned about Tempered Ship, who is running an alternate strategy, a two-stop on only the medium tires?
I was concerned slightly, but I didn't expect him to do that strategy. I was also concerned with Breezy. He's very quick as well, and I hate that he DC'd. But yeah, I think if Temper didn't do that strategy, he probably would have put up a bit more of a fight. Maybe he's learned something today that he could transfer to tomorrow.
All right. Well, unless you have anything else you want to say, there's not really anything else I have to ask you.
I'm good, man. I appreciate you.
All right. Well, that is the word from Maze, and now we'll wrap up our broadcast for the last Porsche Cup race of the season. Tomorrow night we will be back though for the GT3 Pro race. We are still watching a very tight championship fight going on there, so please do join us. But until next time, I've been your host for today's broadcast, Insane Leader 13. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Farewell and goodbye, everyone.